Okay, I'm here with Andrea Donsky. She's a registered holistic nutritionist and entrepreneur based in Toronto, fellow Canadian, founder of naturallysavvy.com and co-founder of naturallysavvy.com and founder of a new company called Morphus. And it's related to menopause. So we're going to talk all about that. And I think we met on TikTok. I think I discovered you on TikTok, actually talking to your mom, which I thought was really cute. I think that's the first time I saw you. And fellow Canadian, and you are just as obsessive. I think more obsessive than I am. Much more because you're new. You know, it's your work. But welcome. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you for having me, Emery. I'm excited.
Okay, so when did you you are a scholar of this thing we call menopause? When and how did this develop? Was it was your own personal experience that started it?
Oh yeah. It started so I had a baby, my third, when I was 41. Okay. And I thought I don't know when my mom went into menopause because she had a hysterectomy. So she was forced into menopause through hysterectomy, and she had a full hysterectomy. And when I had Abby, my third, I was like, oh yeah, I'm not going to go into menopause till I'm a lot later, a lot older. And then it started like maybe a year or two later, and it started, but in hindsight, now I understand that it was perimenopause, but when I was going through it, I had no clue. I did not understand what I was going through. I didn't understand what was happening to my body. And for me, the biggest thing was I was gaining and losing weight as if like it was overnight. I would gain 8 to 10 pounds. I would lose 8 to 10 pounds. And I'm talking about like, I couldn't even do up my pants. Like I would change an entire size of clothing for me. And my moods, oh my God, I was all over the place. Horrible moods, like zero sex drive. Like it was like, it hit me really hard. But again, I didn't understand what it was. So then I would spend, I probably the 5 years just kind of in this state and not really understanding it. And I was focusing on Naturally Savvy and I was doing my thing, still never changing how I ate or what I did. My lifestyle was the same, but everything else was going on around me. Then when I turned 47, and about 2 months into my 47th birthday, that's when everything changed for me. That's when it was like had the biggest impact on me and it was also coupled with everything I'd been experiencing. The hot flashes started.
Okay.
And now the weight I could deal with, the hot flashes, whole other story. I could not function to the point where I would literally be crying. I would be in tears and I looked at my husband and I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I can't even function. I can't, it would last for like anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. I'd be boiling. I'd get a reprieve for a minute or two, and then it would happen again. Like it was happening several times a day. And that's what led me into my research of like, okay, first of all, I have to help myself and other women because I knew how awful I was feeling. My heart was like, oh my gosh, I need to be able to help women who are feeling the same thing. So that led me down my rabbit hole of research and looking for ingredients. And I couldn't do hormone therapy for several reasons. So it led me down the research and the rabbit hole of looking for natural supplements and really starting to understand what is going on in our body and what is causing it. So I had the hot flashes, the night sweats, and everything else that coupled with it, on top of everything that I was already experiencing, like the weight gain and the mood swings and the loss of libido. So it was like, oh my gosh, what is happening to me? And I need to understand it.
And you were look, you were a healthy person. This was your work. Like you must have had an already pretty healthy diet and lifestyle. Like sometimes you think people are hit hard like this and they're really stressed out and they're drinking and they're eating terrible and it hits them hard, but it hit you hard, even though, it had nothing to do with it.
It had nothing to do with it. And that's why I would be so hard on myself. I'd see like, wait a minute, I am yes, I'm a nutritionist. I have been for 15 plus years. I run Naturally Savvy. Now, I was like, well, wait a minute. I understand the way I need to eat and I practice what I preach. And I'm very particular about the food that I'm eating. And I try to it's my job. And that's why I wear a continuous glucose monitor. I'm always trying to research and understand things better. So yes, I was already eating healthy. I was already, at least I thought, doing the best I could do. I mean, obviously, I'm not perfect, but yes, I was eating healthy. I'd already, was doing whole foods. I was doing a little bit of minimally processed, which we will talk about in a minute, something that I discovered along my journey. And I was eating organic as much as I could. I was just doing the best I could do. I've written 3 books on the topic of label reading. I understand ingredients. So yes, to answer your point, I did everything as best as I could do, knowing what I knew at the time and the tools that I had. And so, yeah, it baffled me. I'm like, well, wait a minute, if it's happening to me and I'm doing this as a living and for my personal life, I can only imagine how hard this is for other women who are going through this.
Okay. So how did you turn things around when you were having that hot flashes like that?
So it took me years. So it took me years of trial and error. So I tried, so barring the food piece, which I was already doing, I would definitely start to understand certain foods that would trigger it. So for example, chocolate, caffeine, alcohol, like certain things that I had been doing prior to that. And I wasn't a big drinker, but I liked a glass of wine and Prosecco or whatever it was once in a while. And I couldn't do any of it anymore, even to the point I couldn't even eat chocolate anymore. And I love chocolate. Like I have chocolate every day. I have dark chocolate every day. I don't deprive myself of chocolate. I love it. It has some great antioxidants, some great benefits. So it was things like that were really making a big difference in my life. Like it was triggering these hot flashes for me. So that was the first thing, was understanding how the food that I was eating was affecting me.
Okay.
And then the second thing I did was obviously understanding lifestyle. So stress would trigger, oh my gosh, stress would trigger hot flashes like nothing else. Like I would get a stressful event, I'd be like, oh my God, there it goes, right? So understanding how our lifestyle impacts our triggers as well, or our signs and symptoms as well. And then also understanding certain supplements about how they could help manage my symptoms. So I would say it was like a 3-pronged approach to nutrition, lifestyle, as well as supplements.
Okay. And let me see. Okay. For the hot flashes in particular, what did you do? Like you couldn't take HRT. I know one thing you did. It's my favorite supplement. And you told me to take, we've spoken before and you told me to take way more of it and it's helped eliminate my hot flashes, but I can't say it. I can't pronounce it.
Oh, pignogenol. Yeah, I do love pignogenol. It is one supplement that's great. There's a few supplements that are really great, but until I got to actually the one that worked, I actually tried many different supplements.
Okay.
And this is why I want to be very clear. So I'm a nutritionist. Obviously, food and nutrition is a very big, we can do so much with our nutrition, like so much, like by reducing the amount of refined carbs that we're eating, right? Increasing our vegetables, increasing our lean protein, our fats. Like there are things that we can do to help manage blood sugar levels, which have a very big implication as we get into this stage of life, as you and I have talked about. Now, I also did the supplement route and I tried everything. I tried Vitex and I tried Don Quay and I tried Black Cohosh and I tried all of these supplements that were, great for menopause, but for me, they weren't good for me. And, I'll give you an example, something like Black Cohosh. It'll work to help with hot flashes. It works. Like we know it works, but we also know the research shows that it can cause issues with our liver. And it can lead to something called NAFLD, which is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So, but I didn't do that research prior to taking it. Like I was looking more in terms of like, okay, what can I do to help alleviate these hot flashes? But then once I started to have these symptoms, I was like, okay, what is the research saying, and tying it all together? And I realized that could it be something like Black Cohosh that is causing NAFLD? I ended up having NAFLD.
Okay.
I had an ultrasound and I had my liver enzymes tested. So I ended up going off it, and it took a while, but then my liver enzymes returned back to normal. So these are the things that I say to women. I'm like, don't just go taking anything because it says, it'll help menopause symptoms, right? Like we really have to understand, and why I've dedicated the last, oh my gosh, like I'm 51 now. I've dedicated the last 4 years to really understanding what are these supplements that we're taking? Do they have an effect on our hormones? How are they affecting our hormones? And, are they playing other roles in our body? So things that we may have been able to take before may not be so good for us right now.
Where do you think people should go? Because this information isn't that easy to find when you're searching, when you're Googling, right? Like it's just not that easy to find. Okay, read an article that is say 5 supplements you can take to help with your menopause, but then they'll just say why they're good. And they rarely will say, and also we know that these supplements aren't always extensively studied in the same way that drugs are. So how would you recommend people to go about it before they go on?
Well, first of all, make sure you're following me on TikTok, because that is what I do day in, day out.
Yeah. And it's true. You make so many videos. It's awesome.
I do. And I try to be, and whenever I put anything out, I try to be as factual as possible. We fact check everything, my team and I. So we really want to make sure. Sometimes, sometimes I would laugh when people are like, post, 3 times a day. I'm like, I try to do once a day, if that, because I'm so particular with what I post. Like I really try to be factual in my information. I would say just make sure that you speak to someone that you trust. Speak to someone who's in menopause. Speak to someone who's done the research, who understands it. I have literally made it my passion and my life's mission right now at this stage of my life to fully understand the supplements that we are taking, the ingredients. I spend days, I speak to ingredient companies. I read the research. Like this is what I do, right? So finding somebody that you trust, that you feel that can give you the proper information.
Yeah. Would you recommend going to, like, it's difficult because your doctor's not going to know a lot about these supplements, probably, right? Like you can say to your doctor, should I take this? And I don't know how much they're going to know about it. Would you think people should ask a naturopath, consult a naturopath, or?
Well, I always think people should speak to their doctors before taking any supplement because, if you're on any type of medication, you want to get the okay from your doctor, right? Now, in a lot of cases, I've heard that doctors, if they might say that they don't know, and then obviously to do their own research. So my whole thing is we have to empower ourselves to do the research. We have to understand what we're taking. We can't just take it, whether it's from a naturopath or anybody else. Like you have to understand what you're putting in your body. And so my biggest message is empowering women to understand what they're putting in and on their body. Like hands down. That's why. Yeah, sorry.
I've been saying this lately. Read the actual study. Don't read the story about the study, because I'm a journalist and I know that how not all journalists are as sort of like obsessive, and we know how studies can be reported. You can very easily find the study and read it, and it will be boring, and you want to stop reading it, and it won't be it won't be like a fun thing to read. But why not? Because then you've actually looked at the primary document, and you can say, okay, and then you can take it to your doctor and you can ask them about it, or you can find someone to follow up about it. But I think it's out there. Most of them are out there.
Yeah, and you could read it. Sometimes they're a little difficult to understand, maybe when it gets, it could be a little bit, but yeah, do your best to read it. And I also am a big believer that having a team, so it's not necessarily, and I know sometimes there's budget and cost that comes with this as well, but also having a team. So you have your doctor, your doctor is crucial. And then maybe having someone like a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor on the other, so that you can bounce things off of both of them, right? So it's the best of both worlds. So again, I understand that budget constraints can be an issue, but like you said, we can go online, we can look at things, we can research it ourselves to see, or maybe there's a friend you can ask who's gone through something, right? So it's building that team of wellness experts, like not even wellness experts, it's like our health team, right?
Yeah, and finding credible people online to talk to. Okay, so what would you say? I mean, there's so much to say about nutrition. We're so vulnerable at this time. In terms of our vulnerability to future conditions like insulin resistance. Maybe just talk about that for a little bit. I mean, it's not just stopping eating processed food and drinking. Like it's actually can be a little bit more than that.
Well, nutrition is really vital at this stage of life. So things that we've been doing before may not work for us now. Like, for example, like I mentioned, the alcohol. So if you were able to drink alcohol before and there were no issues with it, whereas now it might create those triggers for you, right? Or sugar, or having our desserts, so we really need to rethink our nutrition as we get into perimenopause and menopause, and really starting as early as you can. Because, if you're starting, let's say you're your early 40s or your mid 30s, and now we hear people who, women who are going through it even in their early 30s and late 20s, and, starting to understand how food affects our body. So just by switching up the nutrition, that can make a massive difference, right? So focusing on good, healthy fats. We need fat in our diet. Our brains are made up of 60% fat. So not being afraid of good fat, right? So taking away the bad fats. Now, again, I know that there's a whole language thing about good versus bad, but I use that terminology just for ease of understanding. But we can use healthy fats versus unhealthy fats, right? So we know that healthy fats like olive oil and avocado oil and certified sustainable Malaysian palm fruit oil and coconut oil and ghee and grass-fed butter, if you can handle the dairy in minimal amounts, these are good fats for our body. It's not going to have an effect on blood sugar, right? And it's going to keep us fuller longer, and it's going to give us energy. Then we've got the protein. So we need protein. Protein's really important as the building blocks. Then we've got our vegetables. We need our vitamins and our minerals. It's super important, right? And then when it comes to fruits, we always say, you know, it's looking at the lower sugary fruits. So if you're going to have fruits, having like a berry, right? And watching how much you're taking in, like a half a cup of berries as opposed to the entire container, or a half a sour apple as opposed to, you know, 1 or 2 apples. Like, it's just being mindful of how much we're eating. So quantity plays a big role too, in terms of it, over and above also what you're eating. So how much you're eating plays a big role. So I would just say, like, focusing on your nutrition, really minimizing those ultra processed foods. Ultra processed foods will have a lot of sugar. It'll have a lot of the unhealthy fats. Just by eliminating those unprocessed foods will make a really big difference. Once you've done that and watching how much sugar that you're taking in, then you can go to like the more minimally processed foods, but even watching that. So for example, in minimally processed foods, and here's another thing that I learned firsthand, is I was eating minimally processed foods for a long time because I have 3 kids, I'm working, I have 2 companies that I'm running. I'm super busy, as we all are, many of us are. And I just wanted to be able to, you know, be able to sometimes take something from a box and eat it for dinner, right? So, or just grab a snack, and that's okay, because if we're understanding what's in the ingredients that we're eating, I'm okay with the minimally processed. What I started to understand and learn is that even in these minimally processed ingredient or products, is that there's something called seed oils in a lot of them. And this is newer research that's coming out. And the seed oils are those oils that create oxidative stress in our body, but also inflammation. And again, as we go into menopause, we are more prone to inflammation. So understanding, again, what we're eating and how it's affecting our body, even something as simple as an oil or a type of oil or a fat, can make a big difference.
So what seed oil should people be knowing to watch out for?
So you want to watch out for things like canola, also known as rapeseed oil, soy oil, grapeseed oil, corn oil, anything like a trans fat, which is like partially hydrogenated oils. Those are the oils that we really need to be mindful of. Sunflower, safflower. Yeah. So and what's interesting is that, again, I've been in the natural health industry or health and wellness industry for 21 years. And so I'm not new to the industry. And again, this is my passion. I love it. I walk the walk, I walk the talk, however you want to say it. And, you know, for me, I always thought, okay, well, we're going to get rid of the canola because we heard bad things about canola oil and from the rumblings. And then all the companies switched, or many companies switched, to sunflower and safflower oil because people wanted no more canola oil. But unfortunately, safflower and sunflower can still create that oxidative stress in our body. It is still a seed oil that's creating inflammation. So, and I'll share my story, because I always say, Anne Marie, I'm an N of 1. So I don't share anything or say anything unless I've tried it myself, or I know someone who has, or I've read the research, or I've spoken to a lot of women about it. And for me, so this is even up to like a year ago, I would come out of bed, and I'm eating my way of eating, and I would get up in the morning and I'd come out of bed, and then I would put my feet on the ground, and I'd be like, felt like pins and needles at the bottom of my feet. And I'm like, okay, there's still inflammation going in my body. I understand genetics. I know I'm more prone to IL-6, which is inflammation. Like, I understand the genetic portion of it. I have more prone to higher cortisol, but I'm trying to do everything the best I can right now and understand it. But I was like, there's something going on. Like, why am I still getting inflammation in my feet? So I was eating, I love there's like these seaweed snacks, and I was eating them like by the like, I just love them, and they're great. Seaweed's amazing. It's high in iodine, great for our ovaries and for our thyroid. And I read the ingredients, and it had sunflower oil in it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So anyways, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to try eliminating it. Within weeks, massive difference. And now I have not eaten seed oils. It's been, I think, almost a year now. And it is like massive difference. And if I have, let's say, canola oil by mistake, I will feel it the next morning and for me, it's in my feet. We're all different, but for me, I will feel it. So it's really what they do, the seed oils, is they take up space in the cells instead of the nutrients. They don't allow the nutrients in. So once those, and it could take a year for those seed oils to actually get eliminated from your body. Like, it's pretty phenomenal. There's an amazing book called Deep Nutrition by Dr. Kate Shanahan. I highly recommend it.
It's amazing when you start looking at the ingredients of the things you think that are healthy. Like I spend a lot of time in coffee shops. I'm a freelancer and I live alone. And sometimes I'm just like, I can do more work there, but I get hungry and I thought I was eating healthy snacks in the coffee shop, right? Like whatever energy balls they had or whatever. Even the healthiest ones like Fit This and that have those seed oils in them.
Seed oils, yeah, and it's newer information, and but I will tell you this, it is really hard to eliminate. It is not easy. If you go to the store and you're buying packaged foods, which most of us do, like even something like a hummus, or, like you look at the ingredients they're using, whether it's sunflower, whether it's canola, like these oils are being used in it. So it makes the argument for try to do whatever you can at home. Like my sister, I told her, I'm like, I love hummus. I love to eat it once in a while, like kind of as a snack. And my sister's like, make your own. It's so easy. And she showed me, it literally took her 5 seconds to make, like, it was like, I don't know, like 5 minutes to make it. And you put in like chickpeas and lemon juice and tahini, like it's really simple to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try it. Listen, I always laugh. I'm like, I'm the nutritionist who doesn't love to sit and cook for hours. I just don't. I like more convenience. But something like that is super easy to do, and just trying to eat whole foods as much as I can. That's kind of been my thing that I've tried to really focus on.
Well, it's funny that you say that because a couple of years ago, my body pain was so bad that I thought I'm going to have to go to the doctor, and I know I'm going to get a diagnosis of some sort of autoimmune or arthritis. It hurt to like even just roll over in bed, my hips. And then I heard that the Whole30 could I didn't do it for weight loss, although I did lose weight. I did the Whole30, which gets criticized a lot as a very extreme diet, but it's 1 month, and anyone who goes on that thing will just marvel to you how well you feel, because you're not eating any of this, you're not eating any of it. And my body pain after 10 days was like, it was like a miracle. It was like 80% gone. Yeah. And I think that
And
probably
look at it just through food, right? Isn't that incredible? Just through food. Nutrition plays a huge role.
Yeah, there's so much discussion of all the things we can take, and it's great to explore all the things, but it's like the number one thing that we should first be looking at. And I'm interested in okay, so we hear a lot on social media. There seems to be a movement now. It's a backlash against diet culture. So it's like eat sugar, eat dairy, I see this all the time. And it's hard because there's a lot of people out there recovering from eating disorders, but also we are finding out more and more that our nutrition is personalized. It's not just menopause and perimenopause we have to deal with. We also all are different. So I just wondered if you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a big believer in something that you'll hear me say often. If you'll go on any of my TikTok lives or hear me speak, is I always will say, what works for you may not work for me, and what works for me may not work for you. I truly believe that we are all different and we all require different things. And if you want to eat a certain way and it works for you, amazing. And it may not work for me. And that's okay. It's okay to have the conversation of, we're all different and there are different things that work for all of us. Like, it's just the mantra of you have to do this and it's the only way to do it. It doesn't sit well with me as a nutritionist and somebody who's in menopause. It just doesn't sit well with me. And somebody who is, I'm not an expert in genetics, but I have spoken to many geneticists and understand it a little bit, is we are all made differently. So I really believe as we get into perimenopause and menopause, there are certain things that we need to be more mindful of. And again, I will always stay in my lane. My lane is perimenopause and menopause. So if you're talking about something when it comes to that, and they're talking about it prior to this, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about what happens as we get into perimenopause and menopause. And we do know that there are certain things that help us feel better, that help us prevent certain things by not eating certain things and eating certain things. So for example, like sugar, yes, it is a culprit. It can cause or lead to something called insulin resistance, which we talked about earlier, which means that the insulin isn't working as well to get the glucose into our cells. And what happens is, and especially as we get into perimenopause and menopause, one of the number one complaints is weight gain. And we hear it over and over, and it's in our belly and it's hard and it's so frustrating for so many of us. And I understand because I was there. And what we do know and understand now is that, when we eat something with sugar or anything really, other than like, let's say fat and even protein can a little bit, but not so much. When we eat something, our glucose goes up, goes into our blood. Then our pancreas, which is an incredible organ, it actually secretes insulin to help get us that glucose out of the blood, right? Because it can't be in the blood. But what starts to happen is our insulin doesn't work as well as we age and as we get into perimenopause and menopause. So what triggers that, or what can cause that or lead to that, is sugar, right? Refined carbohydrates. So if we know this and the research shows it, why wouldn't we be more mindful of not eating those ultra processed foods or the refined carbohydrates that have no fiber to help prevent the blood sugar spikes? So these are the things that I say, like, there is research out there that can really help us prevent, I can't say prevent, but it can help us minimize our chances of getting that. And just, we have to be more mindful. It's like if you equate it to like, insulin resistant is like a tree, and then there's all these offshoots of things that can happen. Well, let's just stop it at the root of the tree so that we don't end up having those offshoots, like whether it's the weight gain or whether it's like all the other things that can come from it. So it's just more of being mindful of what we're putting in our body and how it can affect our blood sugar. And it's a big thing as we get in. About 88% of the American population is insulin resistant. And as we, age plays a factor, but so does being in menopause and perimenopause.
But this is not, when you say a term, it's just like, oh, insulin resistant. Is this not an early warning sign for all the other problems that you can get down the road? It's like, it means you could be diabetic. It means you could have problems with your heart. It means you could have problems with all sorts of things, right?
So there's a doctor who specializes in this, and his name is Dr. Benjamin Bickman. I highly recommend looking him up. And he talks about insulin resistance and really explains it well. So he will tell you that he believes it is at the root of many other issues that can happen. So yeah, highly recommend Googling him and checking him out. And he has a book called Why We Get Sick, which I think it's called Why We Get Sick, something like that, which is excellent.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's concerned about it, and it's linked to all the big ones that we worry about. So these are the things that we can do now when our body's sort of shooting off these warning signs, right? But it's a lot of work. I've just been through a bunch of tests myself, and it took up 2 weeks. I'm so behind on everything because it took so much time to talk to to do all these appointments, but it's worth it anyway. No, and I think I told you I've been to 4 specialists and no one mentioned perimenopause, even though I'm 51.
Yeah. It's common. And then I've heard from from women saying that, they've been told that they're too young for it in their mid 40s, and they're not too young for it. We now know. So if we want to go into the definition for a minute, perimenopause, it can be anywhere from 2 to 12 years before menopause, right? And they could start generally in our mid 30s, like 35, but it can happen earlier. And the average age of menopause in North America is 51 and a half. So in your mid 40s, if you are experiencing these symptoms, it's not too early to be, it's not too early to say that it's perimenopause. However, having said that, if you have signs and symptoms, even though like my team and I have researched over 85 signs and symptoms right now for
85.
perimenopause. 85. So I heard there were about 40 up to that, and now we've tracked over 85. You still want to go to your doctor and get it checked out, because you always want to eliminate anything. Could it be an underlying issue for something else? You always want to get it checked out. And if they say it's not, it's okay, you're okay, then we can go back and say, okay, well, let's look at what could be the reason for the hot flashes or the mood swings or everything else. And it's generally, we got to look at the gut, and we got to look at, hormones. Like there's so many things we have to look at in order to help.
I just posted a TikTok about this because one of the things was my gut. And then tied to the gut, brain fog. I had these exhaustion, depression, body pain. I even had a sore throat. I had SIBO. I had small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. He said, you're going to start feeling better as soon as you start this protocol. I already feel better. I already feel 100 times better just since I started doing the diet. And I was thinking, what's perimenopause? These are all perimenopause symptoms. But unless you go get it checked out, you don't know. And then if you get it checked out, fine. And I mean, even go to the ER if you have chest pains, even all those, because when that's 85, there was a bunch of weird symptoms in there, right? Like what's the weirdest that you found, would you say?
Well, things that I think that are newer for people that didn't really make the connection would be like itchy skin.
Yeah.
Itchy skin. itchy everything. That's really because our estrogen is declining, right? And estrogen actually helps to keep moisture in the skin, and it affects collagen. So itchy everything has been a big one. And a lot of women I find and when I do my TikToks, that's why I love doing TikToks so much, because I'm always asking questions. So that would be one that I think people didn't know. Burning tongue. That's another one that's very interesting, that a lot of people burning under their feet, like burning under the soles of their feet.
I get that when I'm asleep sometimes. I'll wake up and I'll just be like, what's going on? My feet are on fire.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is, which has been related to, like, let's say a magnesium deficiency, is because about 80% of us really need magnesium, and we're deficient in magnesium, and stress depletes magnesium even more. And when it's depleted from our body, it's like a vicious circle. It makes us more stressed. Like, it's really interesting, magnesium. And so for me, what's been happening, if let's say I'm stressed one day and I didn't take enough magnesium, or, I take a magnesium supplement, and then try to eat your magnesium rich foods, of course, but I would get like Charlie horses in the middle of the night. Like, my leg would start to, like, you hear a lot about like restless leg and Charlie horses and all that. So it's very interesting to see all the things that can happen or that can go on. But the most common ones would be weight gain, the mood swings, anxiety, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of mood, and a lot of weight. And I'd say sleep also, like, that's way up there, and skin. So like, I can go on and on, but there's like so many.
It's like when you say it, it's like the main things are, and then you can say,
and
like,
then I'm like, la, 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 la.
and I just know younger people are just like, what? Like, what the hell are you talking about? So you're on the other side. You are on the other side. And how long have you been on the other side of it, and how does it feel? And what can you say about it?
So yes, I'm on the other side. I am in full menopause, and it's interesting. So how long? I don't really know, because when I had gone a year, so interesting story. So, which is another thing that I've just learned so much about. So when I was 48, turning 49, I went a year without a period. I went 13 months without a period. Then I got a period. So It's interesting that 12 months, I actually went 13 months without a period, and then I got it. And then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm starting again. Then I went another year to the date without a period. And it was like June 24th, I think. And then I got a period, which I thought was a period. Anyways, it was like kind of a weird, and I'm like, I don't know if this is a period. So I went to see my gynecologist, and she had said, let's be safe, and let's do, an ultrasound, let's do a biopsy, let's do a whole bunch of things just to see what's going on. Anyways, it ended up being that it wasn't a period, that it was complete dryness. And what happened was, which is crazy interesting. So now I question as to whether or not the 13 months was a period or not, or what, like, so it's like, I don't know, like, and that's why I was like, and asking my gynecologist, she was unsure as well. So I don't know if I've been in menopause now for 2 years, or I've been in menopause for 3 years. Like, I don't know. So it's somewhere around there.
Okay. And it's important to point out the reason she wanted to check you out is, they say, if you have any bleeding after your year, you should definitely get it checked out. It could be something as simple as what you're talking about. Yeah. Or, do you feel different?
Do I feel different? It's also because I have so many more answers now. So I understand it so much better now. Yes, but again, I'm also taking supplements that help with my mood, and help with my hot flashes, and help with so many different things that are going on. I could tell you for sure that my weight has evened out. I've understood now, my hormones have settled down. So I don't get the 8 to 10 pounds of weight gain and weight loss on a regular basis. That has definitely simmered down. And again, I'm still eating the way I always ate. And I am taking certain supplements to help with my blood sugar. So helping to regulate my blood sugar. And so I'd say from that standpoint, yes, I feel a difference for sure. My moods, I feel a big difference. I feel like it's the up and down of the hormones that are really a culprit in that. And definitely that has evened out for me. I'd say that, I try my best to, I get anxious sometimes, or I might get a little bit more anxious easier than I used to. That is even better than it was in perimenopause. So understanding those lifestyle strategies are really important. Like, I really try to get out and get into nature like a couple times a week, because that has made a really big difference for my parasympathetic nervous system. So really just trying to get myself to relax, because I do have type A personality. I'm a go person. And I try to just relax as much as I can. And you know what it is too, Anne-Marie? It's giving ourselves permission to relax, because we as women, we have a lot going on, and, we're working. And if you have a family and if you're raising a family, like, there's a lot going on all the time for us. And we're always, if you have kids, then you're taking care of your family. If you don't have children, you're taking care of your friends and your parents, like everyone around you. Right. So it's a time in our lives where I feel like we really need to be gentle with ourselves, because we could be our own worst critic, and that isn't helpful to us either. So just being patient with ourselves.
Did you have a renewed, like I have this renewed zest. Like I can look back in my life and had times when I was like super ambitious when I was starting my career, and then later like surges of ambition. And then now I'm launching Hot Flash, and I have this crazy like zest for like a million things I want to do. And I'm so excited to have it back, because at my 40s were kind of a time where I was like, what am I going to do with my life? I can't see. But I find that can create a stress, because it's like, I want to do this all and I want to do it now. And it's like, I don't know. Do you have that feeling? Because you're launching, you're launching a company, and
yeah, Morphus. I would say during perimenopause, that's a really good point, is I actually had a lot of issues with attention and focus, and it was very hard for me. There was quite a bit of time there where I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, I am Miss Go-Getter. Like my whole career, 21 years, I built 3 companies. Like, what is going on? Why can't I, like, where's my drive? And I remember saying to my sister-in-law, I think I went from type A to type C plus. Like, it was so funny.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I remember saying to people, because I left work and started freelancing, and I was like, I don't know what the problem is. I don't know how to organize myself anymore. I don't know how to make a to-do list. They're all over the place. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm only just getting it together now.
Totally. So that was a big thing for me for a very long time. So if that's, for people who are listening and you're in that place, I would say just be gentle with yourself. Yeah. It will even out again. Obviously, I do know that I have, there's a lot of new information and discussion around now with like ADHD and all these things that are kind of like exacerbating as we get into menopause, things like trauma that are coming back up for us as we get into this stage of life. So there's so many, as a holistic nutritionist, what we do is we look at the mental, emotional, and physical. It's not just one thing, right? It's not just our signs and symptoms. It's everything else that's around us. So it's understanding that that's why the lifestyle piece for me is so important. And it's one that can be hard to do, but I really try like every day to be like, okay, I'm going to go and, watch I love a show on Netflix. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go watch my funny show, and like something like Schitt's Creek. It kept me for so long. I was so happy when it was on. I was so sad when it ended, but it just made me feel so happy. Like it was so great. And it made me laugh. So like just doing something that's going to help to relax you, help you take it down, laugh a little bit, so that you kind of just bring that lifestyle into it a little bit is so crucial, in my opinion.
What do you think in the 4 years that you've been covering the space, like looking at the space, what do you think has changed? Social media wise, what you're seeing in media about all of the menopause transition?
I'd say people are talking about it more now. I don't know if it's because it's changed or because now I'm more aware of it, but and I've met such amazing people like yourself, and people who are chatting about it and not afraid. And I think we've got these women, our Gen X, and I think we're not going into menopause the way our mothers and our grandmothers did. I talk about this with my mother very openly. Like you said, Anne-Marie, I do a lot of videos with my mom on my page. And even when my mom had her hysterectomy, I don't even think I ever asked her a question about it. So it's like, and now we're like, blah, 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 like asking her a million questions. And my grandmother, she's like, my mom never spoke to her mom about it. And so it was like, we're open. We're not going into it gently. I always say us Gen Xers are not going into menopause gently. We are talking about it. We're not embarrassed about it. And I think some of us are still very embarrassed about it, and that's okay. Like, that's okay. Yeah. So even myself, when I started in this space, I would talk to my girlfriends, because anyone who I was in high school with and graduated with, I would bring it up, and the reactions are very interesting. And by the way, there's never judgment from me. Like, I don't judge anybody. It's not my place. I just like to share observations. So some women were like, some of my friends were like, oh yeah, like I noticed this is happening. And others are like, oh no, I'm not even there yet. Like, I'm not even going there. And it's very interesting, because I was the same way for so long. I was like, I remember before I turned 50, I had a very hard time with it. At like 47, closing in on 50, I was like, oh my God, I'm so old. 50, so old. That number in your head is like, and I didn't want to tell anybody. And I would always tell my kids, are like, how old are you? I'm like, oh, I'm 29 again. Like I would be so embarrassed of my age and how old I was turning. And then I listened to an Oprah podcast, and it literally changed everything for me. And she was interviewing 3 models, supermodels, and they were all in their 60s now. And they were saying, and they were talking openly about aging, which, I love that whole conversation about aging. And Oprah was saying that she didn't understand why people would be embarrassed of their age, because the older she is just means the more experience she's had. So the more she could share with other people. And I was like, ding, 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 done. I was like, Oprah, as always, like, love you.
Aha moment. You had an Oprah aha moment. Yeah.
Aha moment. And I was like, okay, I get it. And then from then on, when I turned 50, I would tell everybody, oh, I'm 50, I'm 50. Now I'm like, I tell everybody, I'm 50, I'm 51. Like, it's not even like an issue for me.
Hilarious. But don't you find when you're okay with it, everyone is okay with it? Like I'm dating, like I'm on Tinder literally at 51 and I am all fine with it. But 4 years ago, I was like, what am I going to do? This is it. This is the end of, and I even joked when I was starting Hot Flash, I was saying to my friends, like, this is the nail in the coffin for me ever getting married, because I'll be talking. No, it's fine. It's fine. If you are fine with stuff, I think other people are fine with it. If you're not fine with your age, I've interviewed so many women later who they won't tell me their age, or, it's just, life's too short to not be okay with it. And I'm the same as you. I tell everyone, and people even say to me, why do you say your age so much? I'm like, cause I'm so proud to be this old, and I feel good, and not be embarrassed.
We're blessed to live, to live into our 50s. Like, it's true. Like years ago, that didn't happen. Right. Like, so I think I agree with you, and good for you. Like, I love that. And I want you to share more about what your dating experience is. And, I think it's fascinating and fabulous, right? Like that you're kind of, you're talking about an area that I don't think a lot of people talk about.
Yeah. Well, if anyone's going to be a jerk to you about your age or the biological situation that half of us go through, then they're not worth any time, right? Obviously. Okay. So tell me about Morphus. Tell me what's going on.
So I have a partner, her name is Randy. I've had the same female business partner for 21 years. I am a huge advocate of women supporting women. It is literally another passion of mine, entrepreneurship, menopause, and now, and also the women supporting women.
That is a very sorry to interrupt. That is a very successful business partnership. These are, I think they have a lower success rate than marriage, don't they normally?
Well, especially 2 women. I met Michael Eisner years ago. I don't know Michael Eisner. So he had written a book about partnerships. And this was in 2010, I believe. It's a fabulous book, by the way. And when I met him, I had said to him, and Randy and I were only business partners at that point for 10 years. And I said to him, I'm like, oh, how many men do you have? Like 2 male partners versus females? And he said, you know what, Andrea? It's very hard to find 2 female business partners. Wow. And the one that he had put 1 in his book of 2 female business partners out of 10. Yeah. It's like with like Ron Howard and Brian Grazier, and like there were all these others, including his own partnership. And the book is fascinating. It's super interesting. But I remember saying to Michael at the time, I'm like, next book, Michael, you got to include Randy and I, because we really are. And he laughed. And it was only 10 years at that point. Now we're 21. But, I agree. It is definitely, it's like, it is, I believe we have the secret. And I always say, like, I have the secret sauce to like what has made us tick. But what it comes down to the most is really supporting each other and taking out all the drama. Like the thing about Randy and I is we just don't like drama. Like there's no drama. Do we argue? Of course we're going to argue. Do we always agree? Absolutely not. We don't always agree. Yeah. But we really are about not having the drama. And if we have an argument, we never let it linger. I'd say that's my number one secret is if we have an argument, 5 seconds later, okay, let's move on. Like we just don't linger in that drama ever. And we don't sit and talk behind each other's backs. Like it just works. It's worked for 21 years. And I'm a big fan of women working together and supporting each other.
You must really set your egos aside. You must not really have, if what I've seen of you so far, it doesn't seem like you would be like some people I've worked with in my career.
Well, I appreciate that. And that means a lot to me. So thank you. So to answer your question about Morphus, so Randy and I started another company. This is a company just for women in menopause. It's called Morphus. And I want to give you the reasoning behind the name because I love it so much. So metamorphosis, as we're changing,
Mhm.
it's us as a community. So it's MORPHS, Morphus. So, and I love the name so much because it's like all of us, the women in perimenopause and menopause, who are changing into these beautiful butterflies and really empowering ourselves and taking control of our lives. Like, it's such a beautiful time in our lives. So to go back to your question of how are we different, I would say definitely more empowered. I feel, more secure, more confident with who I am. And you hear a lot from women. They're like, oh, I don't take the BS anymore. And I don't take this. It's so interesting how we really, and I've been doing spiritual work for many, many, many years. So I'm always working on myself
Mm.
and just understanding, where we've come from and where we are, and continuing to do the work, because the work is really where the payoff is, right? And really understanding who we are and who we're meant to be in this next incredible phase of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say actually doing the work is actually a book called Do the Work. It's like I'm dealing with your adverse childhood experiences. I would say that's done more for me and how I feel and my emotions and even my physical feelings than anything else. Like, that's been a game changer over the last year, because those things dog you, I think, when you don't know.
We have to do the work. I mean, otherwise it's going to come back and it's going to always present itself, and we're going to attract the same things we've always attracted. I mean, there's so much more we can do a whole podcast about spirituality.
Yeah, we should.
It's like
Yeah.
one of my favorite things to talk about, and that's why it's the mental, emotional, spiritual part of it, right?
Yeah. Have you heard about that book, Do the Work? Nicole
I
LePera?
haven't, but I'm going to go check it out. But I work with somebody, her name is Winnie. I work with somebody. It's like, every month, it's like, that's my therapy. That's my monthly therapy. I work with her, and we do, like, she helps me through. I do the work on my own. And for those of you who are wondering, well, what does that mean to do the work? Literally, you could even journal, like even taking something else like a pen and paper or on your computer and just journaling things that are happening, or being aware of something. Let's say we get triggered by something. You'd be like, oh, wait a second, that set me off more than it should have. Okay, what is that? Like, it's just being more mindful or more conscious about things and understanding. So understanding kind of like how to help you navigate it, right? So that you're not getting triggered all the time. Although it's hard work doing the work, as you probably can attest to.
Yeah, because you have a lifetime of whatever coping mechanisms that you had. And for me, it was always, I mean, I'm finding out more and more, because once you start doing the work, there's more things to uncover. So I've just recently accepted that. I used to hear people say that they dissociated from themselves or like disconnected, but I have, because I'll have physical pain in my body for weeks or months and not even, you know what I mean? So it's like, I mean, you have your coping mechanisms, whether you numbed yourself or whatever, like learning to feel what you feel. Yeah. When you say figuring out what triggered you, there's so many people who just haven't even started to do that. That is freedom. Like, that is such important work to do. And it sounds, a lot of people will roll their eyes at spiritual work or whatever, but it's just figuring yourself out. It's like getting a manual for yourself. And yeah, it's a lot of work. Okay. But Morphus. So we're talking supplements, or what's coming down the pipe?
So our website is wearemorphus.com. So WEAREMORPHUS.com. So it's an educational site, and it literally will we go through the different signs and symptoms, and we're starting to build it. So it launched this year in 2021. Okay. And then we're going to have a line of supplements, which is coming up very shortly. So depending on when you're launching this podcast, we will have supplements. And the thing about the Morphus supplements is that they are personally vetted by us. And there are things that we would take ourselves, and there are things that we have done the research on to understand it very fully. And anything that we will launch will have ingredients that we feel are okay, and all based on science. So it's not just things that we're just coming out with just because. It's things that are rooted in science, but for women in menopause and at this point in their lives. So I'm very excited about it. I've never actually sold any supplements of my own ever in 21 years. And there was a reason for that, because I just wanted to understand. Well, first of all, there was a reason, because we were always representing other brands, which we still do through Naturally Savvy, which is great. If you go to naturallysavvy.com, you'll see like those brands are vetted by us as well. And they're brands that we are, absolutely, like, we like them, and they don't have any, ingredients that we feel can be an issue. And for Morphus, it'll be our own brand of supplements, and that we have approved of, and that we know can help women through this phase of their life.
Okay. So where can people find you?
So TikTok, which is where we found each other. So for menopause specifically, I'm on TikTok. So at Andrea Donsky.
Yep.
On Instagram, I'm there as well if you want to communicate with me, because it's easier to message me there. I don't necessarily post, I don't post as often on Instagram, but I do post there once in a while. So definitely follow me on Instagram, and there I'll post. I do a lot of TV segments, and I also talk about other things there. A lot of family stuff too. And then naturallysavvy.com is my website. You can go if you want to just general lifestyle. We are Morphus. I'm everywhere, really.
Yeah,
we have a podcast.
Yes, you have 2 podcasts, right?
I do. We have a Naturally Savvy podcast, and then we also have our Morphus podcast. And the Morphus podcast is similar to what we do on YouTube. So if you want to see the video portion of it, you can go to YouTube and just Google Morphus, Andrea Donsky. And if you're on the podcast, you could just Google Morphus for menopause, Morphus for menopause, and that'll come up there. And I have, we have quite a few interviews. I love interviewing people too. That's why, like, this is so fun. It's usually I'm on the other side as well. So this is great. Thank you.
It's nice not to have to think of the questions. Well, you're like an energizer bunny for sure. I'm so glad we connected, and I think we could talk again about all the emotional stuff too. We should.
Love it.
Okay. Thank you so much.